what is a federal grand jury subpoena, and what should an individual or a business do if they receive one? So in a very technical sense, the grand jury is an investigative body that sits in different parts of the state. In South Carolina, there's 4 of them, one in Charleston, 2 in Columbia, so 5 actually, 1 in Charleston, 2 in Columbia, 1 in Florence, 1 in Greenville. And they not only hear indictments, but they also issue process or subpoenas to compel individuals or businesses to provide either documents or testimony. So the grand jury is an investigative body. They have the right to obtain evidence or to seek evidence that could further federal investigations. Practically speaking, the grand jury actually can issue subpoenas. However, practically speaking, they're issued by federal agents who are authorized by the grand jury, and then by assistant U.S. attorneys who work with agents and are authorized by the grand jury. So that grand jury power is usually delegated to agents and prosecutors. They then issue the grand jury subpoenas on the grand jury's behalf. However, those grand jury subpoenas must be honored and answered to with the grand jury. Most of the time, these are going to be document subpoenas. They're looking for business records, phone records, computer records, third-party records. It's almost always going to be bank records, credit card records, those type of things that are being sought and compelled through the grand jury process. On occasion, there's a grand jury subpoena for testimony. If an individual gets a subpoena for testimony, most of the time reaching out to the investigator, and usually their name's right on the subpoena, reaching out to the investigator will make it so that you can do an interview instead of going to the grand jury and testifying. Not always, there's rare occasions and sort of depends on the prosecutor, but for the most part, if an individual is asked to testify to the grand jury, they can usually avoid that and have that subpoena canceled if they sit down and are interviewed by the investigators on the case. And look, the grand jury subpoena is a very powerful tool. If people avoid a grand jury subpoena, they will be brought in front of a federal judge and have to answer to why they did not respond to that grand jury subpoena. So it's a very powerful tool. However, most of the time, once it's received, it can be complied with by providing documentation. Anybody who gets a subpoena for documentation, especially businesses, need to contact a lawyer to make sure they're turning over all of the materials, and sometimes not too many materials. There can be privileged information in those materials that needs to be considered. And second, individuals who receive subpoenas should talk to an attorney about being interviewed by an agent as opposed to showing up to the grand jury to testify. So grand jury subpoenas are a very powerful tool. It's a demand to provide documents. However, it can very easily be managed if an attorney is involved, and we're always happy to help folks on grand jury compliance and grand jury responses. Give us a call, 843-473-7000.